All right, I'm going to discuss the communication process, or what is called the communication model. This is still in chapter 1. This is on page 16 in your textbook, and it discusses each of the parts individually. But I'm going to draw the graphic that is on page 16. So, one reason why we need to understand the communication process as a public speaker, it actually helps you know the individual pieces, which will allow you to be a better communicator. All right, so first off, we have our box. All right, our box is considered the communication context, and this equates to the place, setting, or the environment that the communication happens in. For example, a football stadium, church, a classroom, your own home, a business, a store, and any other place that you can actually think of. But you have to understand that changing the place actually changes how you communicate. All right, there's two people in this process, right? The first person that we have is considered the sender, or what your book calls the speaker. The second person in the process is going to be the receiver, or what your book calls the listener. Either one is acceptable. All right, note again, you change the context, changes the communication. You change the sender, it changes the communication. And also if you change the receiver, it changes the communication. For example, so the speaker is a 2-year-old child or an 8-year-old child, 18-year-old adult, a 50-year-old adult compared to an 80-year-old adult. But also you can look at demographics, which changes their communication, their language choices, vocabulary, also gender. And we can apply those same types of concepts to the receiver too. All right, so whoever the sender is going to send the message to is going to determine what they do, but also the context determines what they do. All right, there's other pieces to this particular process. So the sender actually develops a message. All right. The message can be verbal or nonverbal or a combination of both. But remember, it all is determined by the context, who the sender is, who the receiver is, and also what type of message they want to send. For example, if you were supposed to meet me in the library has specific rules of being quiet. You can't be noisy and yell. So if you were coming into the library and I'm trying to message you that I'm over here, is that more than likely I'm going to quietly do some sort of nonverbal to engage your eyesight, but also to tell you to come over, which would be a gesture with the hands motioning you forward. Now, if we change the venue like a football stadium and you're supposed to meet me in a certain section, that would be permissible. The rules would change where I could yell or be loud or stand up, maybe jump around to get your attention. All right, so the sender is developing a message in a particular environment to send to the receiver. So the speaker has to figure out the channel. The channel is considered the conduit of how they're going to send the information to them. All right, for example, like in a classroom setting, the instructor uses sound waves to get a message to you. There's other ways to get messages to you, possibly via your phone. And with the phone, we can do so many things. We could call you, we could text you, we could FaceTime you, we could actually use social media to communicate with you. As an instructor, if I want to send messages to you, is that possibly I'm going to use your SMCC email. If I was a company, I might send you a letter. Also, if we think of mass-mediated messages, you have messages via radio, TV, film, the internet, any type of advertisements or pop-ups that come up with any type of social media or computer that you're using. So it all depends on the sender. If the sender's trying to send to 1 million people, then possibly mass-mediated messages are going to be the best. If the sender's going to send it to a receiver in a place where they can't receive phone calls, then possibly text messaging is going to be the best. All right, so the receiver receives the message and then they do their own interpretation of the sound symbols, and the receiver gives back feedback. So as you can see, this is a cyclic process. we have these two people negotiating these symbols for communication to occur. Because since our language is a symbol system, is that symbols actually can mean anything that we want them to mean. Therefore, we have to negotiate what those symbols mean, connotatively and denotatively. Lastly, what we have is what's called interference. And interference is anything that can impede the communication process or stop it from happening. All right? Interference can be internal, which would be, i.e., your own thoughts, or external, which could be noises, distractions outside of yourself that can stop communication from happening. All right, so this was a short lecture on the communication process, and you can find it in your book on page 16.